Welcome to the Lifewriting podcast, where married authors and screenwriters Stephen Barnes and Tananarive Due talk about writing during stressful times, breaking into Hollywood, and balancing life. Every week, we'll share more tips on how to build a better life while you create your dream projects, even if it's only one sentence a day. And we have a special guest today that I can't wait to introduce. But first, Steve, let's check in with what's been going on with us in the past week since we launched our first episode.
Well, this is an intense time. There's a lot of things going on. We're at the beginning of the year. And I think that it's really important at the beginning of the year to kind of look back over what you did last year and look at what you want to do in the next 12 months and just kind of say, are my behaviors, if I do the same thing that I have been doing, do I like where I'm going to get to? And the best indicator of where you're going to go is where you've been. I mean, the past doesn't equal the future, but looking at, I took these actions, I felt this way, I connected with these people, and these are the results that I got over the last 12 months. So if you feel like what you did is going to get you where you want to go, that's perfect. You can just zen it then. You can just forget about it. Let me just do what I do every day. Wake up, chop wood, carry water.
So did you get closer this week?
I think so. I mean, that's the thing. I want to, the core goal is to try to improve 1% every day about something. And that means, getting a little bit better at being a husband and father, which is the most important thing. And then a little bit better at communicating and teaching, and sort of the writing and the work in Hollywood, and learn something new in terms of martial arts, yoga, that aspect of my life. So if I look at things, there are so many different things to kind of balance. There is the graphic novel. We can go right down that because you're doing graphic stuff. I'm doing graphic stuff. Let's kind of stop there for just a moment because you talked about how working on a graphic novel, working on a comic book, in essence, is new for you. You're picking something new up.
And I'm not a spring chicken, people. Never too late, hashtag, because listen, I have been curious about graphic novels for years. A very dear friend of mine who passed away in 2011, some of you may know her, author L.A. Banks. Her name was Leslie Banks. Our last email exchanges before she got ill were all about, oh, you need to get into graphic novels. And never, it's the same thing that kept me from trying screenwriting, trying to overcome the mystery of the formatting even kept me from trying screenwriting for years. And now, of course, we have apps that do that for us. But we had a great opportunity that came from a disappointment. We wrote a horror script called The Keeper that has had a couple different sets of producers trying to set it up. Haven't been able to set it up, but we sent it to John Jennings, an editor at Abrams Comic Arts. Megascope is his new imprint, and he loved it and said, hey, let's do it as a graphic novel. And we're going over the colored pages right now, tweaking the dialogue. It's so much like a storyboard for a film that in a lot of ways I feel like I'm getting my movie now. So The Keeper will be out later this year, and working on that is just such a thrill.
So the thing that I'm working on, Eightfold Path with Charles Johnson, who wrote Middle Passage, MacArthur Genius Grant winner and just National Book Award winner, Buddhist scholar, just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And because of him, I was able to get this dream project off the ground. I've been trying to get this project going for 10 years. It's basically, 8 stories that are sort of EC comics, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, so forth. On one level, that's all there. There's a war story, there's a martial arts story, so forth, so on. But underneath the sort of, old Crypt Keeper stuff, there is a serious intent that each of them represents one step in Buddhism's Eightfold Path to enlightenment, right work, right action, right language, and so forth and so on. And John Jennings, once again, gave us the opportunity to do this, and this will be coming out within about a month. So
we definitely need to get you and John Jennings and Charles Johnson.
Absolutely. That's absolutely going to happen. But to create something like that has a serious intent, but at the same time is a lot of fun and is an anthology, a collection of short stories, which have slightly different artistic styles. It was quite a venture. It really was. And I'm all I can do is keep my fingers crossed, because all you can do ultimately is do the very best you can and then hope for the best. The time lag between finishing the work and seeing any kind of response to the work can be, months,
Yeah,
years
it can be
sometimes,
forever.
and you have to both care very much and not give a damn at the same time. You can't associate with it too strongly, but you have to associate with it strongly enough to give it the best you got. So, these things, there's always something that we're writing, there's always something we're correcting, there's always something we're negotiating, there's always something that we're planning. There are multiple different levels, and you have to juggle them all in order to stay sane. And
And
so, how it's, what do you do? What do you do to stay in the center of that storm, T?
well, a couple things. I'm becoming much better at meditating. Although I just mentioned to my therapist, and let's not forget therapy, I just mentioned to my therapist that I don't tend to meditate as often when things are going great. And that's where I can go off the rails because you have to practice being centered and in the moment all the time, good times and bad times. So I can be better about that. And also, it's also very centering for me
Yes.
to be focused on our son Jason. We are homeschooling Jason, and we had this amazing experience just yesterday where we subbed one of the poems from the online platform with Harlem by Langston Hughes. Let's talk about that. What happened to the dream deferred? Let's talk about that poem and go through it and what does it mean. And I feel such joy of connection, passing on lessons my parents passed on to me, having more influence over his curriculum, seeing how he thinks in a way that we haven't been able to because we were not his teachers, and knowing that I have that daily obligation really helps me organize my time and prioritize what I'm working on.
Well, what that does is that leads to the thought of it isn't just that you would be violating your values or violating your mom's values. It is that when you clarify, it's like, I'm doing this for my family. Why are you doing anything that you're doing? I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for the little boy inside me. I'm doing this for my students or the people who come after me. But if I sit in the moment and I feel that I'm balanced between those things, my family is okay, that I'm being okay with my community, I'm being okay with my spirit, then I can simply just do what there is to be done. I can just have fun. I can just laugh. I can just be with Jason if I know that, so we're reading a Langston Hughes poem, and it relates to our history. It relates to the Harlem Renaissance, but it also relates to the question, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it explode? Anger, okay? Where does anger come from? Fear. What is the fear? That I will not be able to have my dreams, that I'll not just be destroyed like getting shot down in the street by a cop, but I'm not going to be able to express myself and be who it is I want to be. And I noticed that when we were reading this to Jason and we asked him, what does it mean? What does that last line mean? He got it.
Yeah.
Because he knows that there have been times in his life when he wanted something, he wanted to create something, and there was an obstacle. And it angered him. Why? Because he was afraid that the obstacle meant I cannot. And so you respond with anger. Anger is how you mobilize that fear. To be able to take a lesson from the cultural to the literary to the personal and psychological, that turns me on. I love being able to look at what it is that we are on all those different levels. And then that means that I am engaged in the act of creation that my own father, never engaged in with me. To be able to be the father I wish I had had.
That's it. You're a great father. You're a great
Uh,
father.
I,
That's one of the first things that
I love my family.
I noticed about you.
Well, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, we
But
will because we
we,
have such an amazing guest.
we really do. Someone who brings the emotion and the reality and turns it into laughter that makes you think. Introduction, please, T.
Y'all will not even believe it. This is our second podcast. We are so new to this that I accidentally didn't even tape audio for the other second podcast we taped last week.
We got backups without backups this time.
We have already somehow scored such a great guest. Well, it's not somehow. Steve and I, along with Dr. Robin R. Means Coleman, who wrote the book Horror Noir, which is the history of Black horror, were invited to the Daily Show podcast, Beyond the Scenes, hosted by Roy Wood Jr. And we had such an amazing conversation. That's going to drop sometime during Black History Month, I think. I'm pretty sure. But based on that, we were kind of shy. Like, can we promote our new podcast at the end of the show? And this gentleman right here not only let us talk about our podcast, he said, I want to be a guest on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Daily Show correspondent, and no BS, because in Hollywood people use the word fan, so casually. I am a huge fan. Literally, this is one of my favorite comics. I am so excited to have comic and Daily Show correspondent Roy Wood Jr.
Well, hello.
I forgot to cue up my
Hello.
applause.
Hello and good evening and happy Martin Luther King Jr. month to you.
Yes,
Happy.
absolutely. Let's not forget
Dr.
Dr.
Reverend
King.
Luther the King.
I
No
had a
black folks
dream.
put it in any order after a while. That's respect.
You
Yeah.
know, he had to have had a dream that we would love him and hear him enough that one day we could both stay on the path and laugh about it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's definitely a good thing. That's really interesting about your son and just the reading that you all. It makes me feel a little bit more normal about my upbringing. You know, my father was a civil rights journalist and covered everything from the South African riots way back in the day in Soweto to the Rhodesian Civil War and civil rights in Vietnam and you best believe it was some black literature in my face every
Yes.
damn day. And I lucked up, and I don't know anything about your child's school system, but I lucked up because, growing up in Birmingham, it was right in the middle of white flight.
oh my
So the
God.
school system was becoming blacker and blacker every year in the 80s. And so it was not uncommon to be assigned a couple of black authors every now and then. And knowing what I know now, we probably got assigned Richard Wright a year or two too early. But I know because Richard Wright low key was angry. He was a little
Just a
angry.
little bit, yeah.
Some tough
Well,
stuff in
angry.
there. Yeah, some tough stuff.
Like first page, you done burnt the house down. Should I be reading this in the fifth grade? But I understand it because I know that those were black teachers who was like, all right, now that y'all ain't got to read The Hobbit, let me give you some of this real shit.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so,
Right.
you all are, it was refreshing to hear that. And you all are 1000% doing the right thing. My child is 5 and I'm trying to decide when to pop the seal on racism. You know, I've made him aware, I'm slowly making him aware that he is black and that you are great and uplifting, you are good. Like building up the layers of resiliency that he'll need later,
Yes.
but letting him know which missiles will soon be headed his way towards his psyche. I
Yes.
have not cracked the seal on that yet.
You know,
I
in
don't
doing
know
that,
when.
to let him know that he has to be strong without making him hate.
And afraid. That's the thing.
And
Because
afraid.
well,
Yeah.
to me, it's okay to acknowledge you have fear. All human beings feel fear. In that fear, if you don't process it directly, turns into anger and pretends that it's just anger. Whereas what's really going on is the fear. So you can be strong. You can also have an attitude. Whatever it is, you have managed to navigate the world beautifully. The attitudes that you have are therefore, to the degree that you've done that healthy, they're healthy attitudes. Just show him your heart, show him who you've been, and then he'll stand on your shoulders and see further.
Yeah, that's what I hope. I hope that he can just find these breadcrumbs. The luxury that my son will have that I didn't with my father is being able, after I'm dead and gone, to find a couple of interviews. Like you want to find my daddy talking to somebody, you need a cassette player, you need a reel to reel. Like you, you gotta. It's a whole effort to
Yeah, you need to
digitize.
digitize all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And put it someplace on a YouTube channel so that nothing, so that it will be there forever. That is his legacy. To
Yeah.
understand, and to me, and I've talked to Tananarive about this, the thing that most fascinates me about you is that you've turned that pain into laughter.
Yeah.
You have transmuted the pain and the fear that you feel, the anger that you feel, into laughter in a healthy way. See, to me, that's magic. I mean, I know how to do that with a scream. Turning fear into a scream, which then releases the tension.
That's why we
But
love
you and
horror
Jordan
so much.
Peele, people like you, are playing a different game. So I really wanted to ask you, how do you do it when you take something like your routine about the African American History Museum? There is
Black History
real
Museum. I love that routine.
implicit pain in that routine, but you turn it into hysterical laughter. That helps keep you sane, my brother. How do you do that?
It's I we are all walking a similar walk, especially if you're black, right? And so for me, the root, like the base tenement of my comedy is this is comedy for black people about the black experience. Now, you can put it under a bunch of bright lights, you can put it on Comedy Central, but at the end of the day, this is comedy that when a joke does what I want it to do, a white person goes, "Wow, I didn't know that." And a black person should watch it and go, "That's what I've been trying to tell y'all."
Amen.
Yes,
And
well
like, and if
put.
the joke can do that with the same sentence, then that's a joke worth keeping. The Civil Rights Museum, man, that whole thing came about because I started noticing at a lot more, and this is post Trayvon Martin. This is a long time ago because the joke you're talking about that's from my first hour special,
I know. Well, you came out the gate hysterical.
2017. So in that one, I'd observed, a little bit, well, just more white people volunteering at blackety black stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I had made a comment about it to a friend of mine, and we kind of got into a debate back and forth just about would you want a white person leading a tour of a Black History Museum? And so there are the pros and cons of it's our history. What are you doing? But if you're wanting to support the culture in some sort of way, more power to you. But then with my comedy, what I'm trying to do, if that's the surface level discussion, then what is the angle on this issue that we haven't considered? And when you go to a new place that people haven't thought about before, then it kind of gives you carte blanche to be explorative. Because, yeah, I don't want white folks to do it. It's our history. And okay, y'all can have that argument. But what was the job application process like? If you're white and you work for a is it a different interview? Do they how woke do you have to be? Like just that nonsensical exploration gives you an opportunity to deviate off of the pain and deviate away from the actual spine of the issue and then come back to the act. When I say spine, I refer to that as the base level train of thought or the issue at hand.
Hmm.
And that's the stuff that's a little bit more emotionally volatile. Like in
So you're looking for the emotional volatility.
correct, you start there and then you swerve off of that and then you come back to what's real. So like in my most recent special, Imperfect Messenger, and this was just more of a throwaway on the way to a bigger point I was trying to make. But to the Civil Rights Museum point, I talked about how when you go to a Civil Rights Museum, you're still angry and you look up at the wall and a lot of the people in those pictures, the white people, they're still alive. And so there is a anger that comes with it. There is a frustration that comes in knowing that these people did these terrible things. There's proof of it, and they still out here walking free next to you at Costco and Rite Aid,
Like the woman who
shopping.
lied on Emmett Till.
There
How is
you
she
go.
still alive? Emmett Till dead in 1955.
Just chilling out there, chilling in the world. So that's the spine. The joke was that's why at civil rights museums now they put all the positive black shit at the exit right before you leave so that you don't get mad. And so that joke was birthed from my trip to the African American Smithsonian in DC, which that was the first time that I'd seen a civil rights museum. Well, I guess Atlanta to a degree too. But that was the first time I saw something where, all right, on this floor, it's nothing but good news.
Mm.
We've gone through slavery, we've gone through desegregation and Emancipation Proclamation and Reconstruction. But on this floor, Beyonce, Michael Jordan, Issa Rae. Thank you for coming.
I love
Right.
it. I love it. Let me ask you a question, Roy, because I see a couple of similarities in our backgrounds. You are the son of a civil rights journalist. I'm the daughter of civil rights activists. I was born on the campus of Florida A&M University, where you attended. That's where
Yes.
my mother was arrested. And as the child of two, my father's John Dew is a lawyer, still living today, 87 years old. And they were literally in my history books. Like in college, I could open the index and, like he said, your routine. The man said, "Oh, that's me in the picture right there."
Yeah.
Like that's my mom in the book right there. And I really feel like if my parents had told me there was no value in pursuing art, I would not be a writer. Both of my sisters are lawyers, with that influence, like change the world, set the world on fire. But my mother, Patricia Stevens Dew, really did lay it down for me that representation is important. The Beverly Hills Hollywood branch of the NAACP got a bunch of support in the 1960s because they understood how important representation was. Did you have that support from family entering the arts?
I would say yes. My father passed when I was 16. I didn't start stand up until I was 19.
Sorry to hear.
Um, my mother, my mother, she's been in higher education, for 30 years, the last 20, at a black college. And she was also, in her day, she was in the first group of students to integrate Delta State University in Mississippi. So my mom, everything was rooted in educating yourself and achieving more. So I'll say this about my mother. My mother has not always agreed with my career choices, but she has always encouraged them,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
It
Makes
does.
total
You
sense.
know, like there was, when I wanted to be an astronaut, she sent me up to Huntsville to space camp. When I
Wow.
wanted to be a firefighter, she found people that were firefighters and got them to give me books on chemistry so I could be a fire inspector. Don't just be a firefighter, go to the next level with the thing. And so when she found out I was doing comedy, I kept that a secret for, almost a year.
Mm.
And then one of her students caught me at an open mic and then ran his stupid mouth. And that's how she found out. She found out from one of her students. And so, we went back and forth for, a while on it. But the only thing she stressed was, you better be down there getting them grades. I don't agree with it. And at the time, I was still riding the bus. Just get them grades. I don't know what you're doing. If that's what you want to do, fine. But make sure you get them grades. And I go, look, if I make good grades, then you cannot argue with me about, you don't get to question this anymore. And she was like, fine. I said, fine. So I went and got them grades and made sure I got my degree in broadcast journalism. And my mother got me a car so I would stop sleeping at the bus station.
Mm.
And she bought
Beautiful.
me, well, let me take that back. I won't give it to her. She put the down payment. I had to pick up the note.
Let's keep it real. Keep it real.
I had
Let's
to pick
correct
up
the
the
record
note.
here.
But my mom got me 2000. It was the first model year of the Ford Focus. It was 2001. And she got me a Ford Focus so I wouldn't have to sleep in that bus station. So even when she didn't completely understand, she always supported. But she also knew the value of that degree because when I graduated, that degree, that broadcast degree, that's what got me my job in radio, which got me the growth in comedy. It's one thing to just be a funny chuckle dude and try and get an internship, but when you're funny and you have the paperwork to back up that the technical side of the job, it takes you even higher. I mean, to this day, I'm riding that. The Daily Show ain't nothing but a mix of the two things that me and my mama was arguing about back in '98:
Which
Mm.
are what?
journalism and comedy.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't
I
So
that
don't do
you spent
comedy.
your whole
You need
life
to go
getting ready.
learn journalism.
Yeah.
That's so funny, because
Yeah.
journalism now is a little dicey as a career. When I was in
Whew.
college, that was the thing my parents said, get that journalism degree. That's your guarantee for
Yo,
work. You
them
can do
kids
that
be
fiction,
asking me
but
advice. They be like, "Hey, what advice do you have for a young journalist?" I'm like, man, I don't even know what to tell you, brother. But
well, people still get hired every day. That's
You know,
true.
yeah,
and
But
when people ask me about, should I go into a master's in fine arts program? Should I study creative writing? My attitude is no, study journalism and acting. That journalism for learning how to represent the world, have discipline, and interact with the money people. The acting to be able to step into the middle of a character, to see the world from the position of
yeah,
the character rather than acting from the outside in. That you have those two things, and I think you have the basics that you need to be a writer. So
yeah,
journalism, I think that as long as human beings have been human beings, people have wanted to hear stories about what they did not experience personally, what's happening over the hill, what happened yesterday, what happened before I was born. So the form may change and will change and is changing drastically, but our interest in hearing stories will continue. So what we have right now is a situation where it's very easy for that stream of information to be polluted. You can't. Who's telling the
Yeah.
truth? Who isn't? Nobody has a reputation. People can say anything they want to on these sites, and it's damaging our society.
The problem also is that opinions are also seen as fact now, and a lot of networks peddle in opinions the majority of
Yes.
the day. So, what the hell is journalism now? Because, like, when the young students ask me, and I'm fearful every time I'm invited to do some classroom Zoom Q&A academia discussion with the students about the state of the, because I don't know what to tell them. Because you could be a hard journalist, yes, you could pursue the stories, but when you look at local news now, so much of that is rip and read, and it's corporate ownership, and it's so half of the stuff that's really making a difference is going to get stifled. So you almost have to work freelance. But then, how do you keep food on the table and keep your lights on
Right.
without eating
That's
off the
road.
dollar menu for the next 5 years while being a freelancer? So it's very difficult that you almost have to blend between the two to a degree. And I
Yes.
and I and I tell people that, creative writing in and of itself is a form of journalism.
Mm.
Comedy is journalism. Script,
Yes.
if you're speaking to an issue, you're speaking to something that has a spine, you're just altering the delivery method in which someone gets the information. You could be a hardcore journalist, or you could write sketch. You do sketch comedy and do the same thing.
So you're using the word spine to mean the intrinsic truth. What is the truth of this situation? Is that accurate?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. So once you see what the truth of the situation is, then in journalism, you try to relate that truth directly. And in something like comedy, you exaggerate it to get a laugh that
There you
allows you to
go.
have perspective.
What is the best delivery vehicle for this particular truth? And then that becomes the wider conversation. Like, all right, I give you a perfect example. So when all the rah-rah was happening at Howard University with the students last year, and everything that the students in the administration, they were bumping heads, and it was making national news. And on the surface, the issue is students mistreated by college, and the dorm room just got mold and rats and roaches, whatever the argument was between those two, right? As an HBCU grad, I view that as family business, and I go, all right,
Mm.
that's not the story that I would have told nationally. The larger conversation is that, because when you look at, when mainstream media got a hold of that story, right? That story is about Howard and Howard's dorms and the way Howard and the Howard students, when the bigger spine of the issue is the relationship between HBCUs and the federal government, especially the smaller, lesser known HBCUs, and the allocation of funding.
Funding, ding, ding,
That's
ding. That's what I
so the
heard with that story, Roy.
it's, but it's not just Howard's funding, it's everybody's funding.
Yes.
So to me, that's the story. So then it becomes like, it just for the Daily Show sake. I'm just walking through like how a Daily Show segment can eventually come to fruition. It's that conversation will be had over a writers meeting in our field meeting. Okay, well, do we want to go down to Howard? And you're like, no, I don't want to go down to Howard. What I want is a panel of HBCU presidents. Give me a bunch of black college presidents so they can all tell me what's going on. And then I'm gonna go sit with whoever in the Biden administration is supposed to be hearing these complaints. Like, that's the conversation. Or the conversation is with some of the black college presidents who sat down with Trump 4 or 5 years ago and
Hmm.
asked them, how's it going now? And not in some gotcha Jordan Klepper kind of way, but just go, hey man, did old boy give you what he said he was gonna give you? No? Okay, well, what is it you need? And I think that's where you have to look at journalism as this vessel to be able to tell many different stories many different ways. I think that the most interesting thing with race that's starting to happen now within storytelling, when you look at Lovecraft Country is a great example of a story that uses, monsters and a little bit of sci-fi, but it talks about the trauma of racism, the
Yeah.
generational trauma of it. My comedy does not exist in that past of racism. Like you got to kind of split racism into three quadrants in storytelling. At least this is
Now
how
let's
I
hear.
split it up.
What are they?
What you done to us, what's happening right now, what you done to us, what you're doing to us, solutions.
Hmm.
And so
Mm.
my comedy traditionally, I try to exist in saying what's happening and then wild, weird solution that nobody would ever really rock with. That's not going to.
That's critical.
I love
You,
it.
you can't get the way to come to get an answer is to have permission to say stupid stuff, to say impossible things. That's how you get to the solution.
It's interesting you say that because, Steve, in the past, certain presidential administrations have brought in science fiction writers, right, to try to come up with solutions or answer questions. We do need a bunch of comedy writers to come together and come up with some of these solutions, right? I don't think it's
Well, it
Yeah.
would break
out
people
there.
out of the boxes. And that's what the solution is going to be something, the answer for how to get out of the box is written on the outside of the box. So it's comedians and fantasists and people like that who can say crazy shit, who can say stuff that makes no sense at all. Somebody will accidentally say something that could actually be the solution
It'll
if you
work.
give, 100 monkeys and 100 typewriters.
One of them going to type a sentence.
So Roy, let me ask you this. I know some of our listeners who know your work and are themselves aspiring comics are always very curious about those first real opportunities. So you started in radio. Oh, well, you were doing stand up from the time of
I
19.
was doing stand up concurrently with my morning radio internship.
Is there a moment that you look back on as your big break in comedy, or was it a series of smaller moments,
It's
or a
just a series
combination?
of smaller moments. I can draw back every single thing that I've done to something that preceded it.
Mm.
I think I can only speak to the arts,
Hmm.
but I believe that our careers, at least in the arts, especially in stand up and acting and stuff like that, you get 2 to 3 real opportunities every year to skip a level or truly advance your career. And you're either prepared in those moments or you fumble the moment or you don't realize that that moment was the moment.
Right.
Yes.
You have
I can think
enough
of a writer's
concurrent.
room I passed on that I look back on now. I was like, oh, what was I thinking?
Mm-hmm.
But that's in retrospect.
In
What you're
retrospect, in
suggesting,
retrospect, yeah.
most people don't think they get any opportunities at all. You say that from your experience in watching other people, there are about 2 to 3, every quarter,
It's minor.
every
It's
triad of a
it's
year.
minor, but you're gonna get a couple opportunities, and some of them they're gonna be before you think you're ready for them. I could take you back 99. When I had an opportunity to open for Tommy Davidson, but it was during midterms, and it was with a club booker that booked about 60% of the comedy clubs in the South. So to have a career as a road comedian, you have to be in with this man.
Hmm.
And this man called me, and I flunked 3 classes. And I'm not saying that that was the wisest thing to do. And, it cost me a semester of school, but that gig opened up the entire Eastern Seaboard for me. So when I graduated, I had a real way to make money. And, there's these little moments, where when I look back at radio, I started doing mornings. Oh, this is a great example. So I started doing mornings. Um, this was ages ago. Like the thing I always try to tell people is just be kind to people as well. Be kind to everybody, especially the people under you and the people across from you. Don't worry about trying to network up, as they say. But more importantly, be nice to people, especially when you don't need anything from them. There was a gentleman, and I've told the story, I haven't told it often, but when I was writing for the campus paper, I did album reviews for rappers. That was one of it. Because at the time, I wanted to be in print. I wanted to write for the Source, and I wanted to be the premier album reviewer. So let me review Trick Daddy and Trina and all of these Southern rappers or whatever. And I get an opportunity to write a review for a rapper that's pretty lesser known for a record label that's not that known. All right, fine. I'll review the album. It's not a big deal for me. It turned out it meant a lot to that record label because when you get one review, it helps to get other reviewers at bigger and better publications to
Yes.
review said album or whatever. And so, the rapper's career didn't really go anywhere, but the man who ran that label, he never forgot that. And so years later, his name is TJ Chapman. And so TJ Chapman, at the time, I was doing prank phone calls in Birmingham. This is years later after I wrote this album review. And I'm doing prank phone calls. And the idea that I had at the time was to take my prank calls and syndicate them to other radio stations in markets where I wasn't getting booked at the local comedy club. So, with the idea being, we play our prank calls once or twice on the air. And it was a blessing because Ricky Smiley had already left. And the new radio jock who hired me to replace Ricky, he says, I need you to do prank calls. I go, that's Ricky's thing. That's not my thing. He goes, well, you figure out if you want a job or not. But we need you to do prank. You can do anything else creatively you want because I wanted to do all of this different stuff to prove that I wasn't Ricky Smiley. And they go, you can do all of that, but also you have to do this, which taught me a valuable lesson about meeting an audience where they are and then drawing them creatively into the different things that you want to explore instead of
Beautiful.
forcing change on people.
True.
So I got these prank calls. I don't know what to do with them. I'm trying to get them in the hands of radio DJs and other places. So TJ Chapman in Tallahassee, he does at the time, I think they still do it. It's a record pool. And so back in the old days, children, radio DJs and club DJs would get together once a quarter and spin records for each other in a nightclub. And you would leave with this goodie bag full of regional rap songs that you could add to your mix CDs or add to your rotation on the radio and stuff like that. And that's how a lot of new music was spread around the South, was through this physical meeting. You would see new artists perform. You would meet so-and-so DJ from Atlanta. He would meet so-and-so DJ from New Orleans. What you playing in New Orleans? Cool. Well, look at what I'm playing in Atlanta. And TJ Chapman's job was to take all of that music and put it in a nice, neat grab bag for every DJ to take back to their region. So I drive down to Tallahassee because I'm a face-to-face kind of person. I'm not big on phones if I can help it. And I sit with TJ and I just go, hey man, it would be a blessing if I could put one of my prank call CDs in that grab bag so that my pranks could spread on mixtapes, which would give me more leverage to getting on the air terrestrially. And TJ said yes. And that's something that he never had to do. And that conversation, I drove 5 hours for a 10-minute conversation that opened up 30 cities for me. And by the end of that summer, my prank calls were syndicated in 50 markets.
Amen.
And
Beautiful strategy.
That and those pranks being on the air, now I can call the comedy club and go, you may not like me, but there is no other. And I was still an opener. I'm an opener with access to promotion, so I have value. And this is where not knowing what you don't know. To your point about the writers' room, I didn't realize it at the time that I was bringing an audience, and that an audience is what the clubs value because they believe that you have an inherent ability to put asses in seats.
Right.
I totally blew off social media. Now you want some advice? Some advice for the youngins that are listening: don't inherit the goals of your ancestors. Don't inherit the goals of your predecessors. Anybody that is ahead of you is doing it a way that you can't do it. So take a pinch of what they were doing and then apply and trust your instincts to whatever it is you think you want to go, wherever it is you think you need to be doing. I made the mistake of idolizing everybody that I opened for, who all came up in an era where TV was the be all end all. You got to get on Letterman, man. You got to get on Leno, man. You got to get on Def Jam, man. You got to get on Comic View, man. I did them all, but by the time I got to all of them, like there was a time when you do David Letterman, it'd be a dude off to the side of the stage with a box of careers for you to choose from.
Exactly. You get your TV series deal, right?
Choose your path.
Well, let
You
me ask let me
decide.
ask a serious question. Everything that you mentioned, Def Comedy Jam and Letterman and doing this and doing that,
Done them
these
all.
were all ways of tapping into an audience.
Correct.
Okay, but the medium changes. The intent to find an audience that you can then bring to whatever platform that you're doing. It would seem to me that the intent has not changed. It's the medium or the method that changes. So if you look at what the previous generation did and ask, what were they trying to accomplish, as opposed to the question, how did they accomplish it?
Yeah.
How they
Right.
accomplished it changes. What they were trying to accomplish remained the same. Is that
And
accurate?
that is extremely accurate, because then you just change your methodology to achieve the same goal. I'll tell you my writer's room that I turned down, quote unquote. So I started selling my prank call CDs as merch on the road, and we had a radio station. The webmaster at the radio station was he was lazy. I could say that. Well, he was only gonna do what they paid him to do,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't gonna do nothing extra. So I go to him. I go, "Yo, man, these pranks do really well. We do a new prank every morning, and I worked hard at these pranks. It takes an hour to get one decent prank phone call. So every day I'm grinding, and we're playing these shits once and never holler back unless I put it on a CD. We do a best of on a Friday, or like if we're a holiday break show or something. So I go, hey man, people should have access to this stuff. So would you mind adding these pranks to the station's website? This is '02. Like, this concept of streaming audio, this was not a thing yet.
Not here.
So I go, would you mind? I'm not gonna. No, I don't know about that. No, I'm not putting the audio. We'd have to get permission. I go, never mind, man. So I went and I taught myself Microsoft Front Page, and I built my first website. Now,
Boom.
that's not necessarily teaching yourself HTML. I don't want nobody to be too impressed. But Microsoft Front Page, that was the WordPress of its era. Basic templates that mirrored Microsoft Word, and you create websites that look like Microsoft Word pages or whatever. And it was efficient enough. So I put my pranks up my damn self. Plug my website. 2 weeks later, my website crashes every day because of lack of server space, because people have been taking the links off my website and emailing them. And this is back when you went viral over email. So people would email the link to my website, and so many people were downloading my pranks, I literally could not keep up with the server space for 2 weeks. So then somebody, I think 04, 05, somewhere in there, YouTube happens. And people were taking my pranks off of my website and putting them on YouTube. And this is when you went to YouTube just to listen to stuff. YouTube was not a visual medium per se. It would just be a static photo, and you would just listen to whatever the hell, And one of them youngins, hey man, this MySpace thing, man, you need to look into that. And some of that YouTube stuff, I really be seeing your stuff a lot on YouTube. Shut up, motherfucker. Ain't nobody fucking with that computer stuff. I'm gonna be on David Letterman.
Yeah.
My original YouTube account, and I'm not lying when I say this, my original YouTube account that I set up and I posted 3 times a year on in 2005 had almost 200,000 subscribers.
What? 3 times a year, 200,000 subscribers, and no cute cat videos? What?
I just had audio, but I didn't nurture it every day. I didn't engage with the audience. I didn't plug my shows on it. I didn't do anything with it. And then eventually I was just posting whatever I wanted to post on it. And I got too many copyright strikes, and they killed my account. And when you think about the exponential growth of what YouTube has become,
Woo.
I was in damn near 250,000 off the rip. What would that number be today? What would the worth be of that audience be today?
And you weren't even trying that hard.
I was not trying. I was not trying. And that part of it, it's just a valuable lesson in understanding which way technology is going and where people's viewing trends are going and where people feel things are going. You know, I
But what
think that part of it is um is imperative for young people to pay attention to. Don't
what would
sleep
have
on it.
happened if you'd had a Roy Wood fan club sort of thing? Have them send you their email addresses so you're keep if what
Bro,
if they
don't
had
even get started with me on the lack of not even having an email capture link on my
yes,
website on my
yes,
Microsoft
yes. You could
page.
have had all of so if YouTube cancels your account, who cares?
Dog, but you're not thinking like that in '03. You're
That's
not,
No,
right.
especially not at 22 years old.
That's
At
no,
that
right.
you're
point,
no.
you're not
But
thinking
there's a
about
22-year
capturing
old
this.
who's hearing this who's going to get it.
Dude, Kevin Hart told a story. Kevin Hart told a story. I don't remember who podcast when years ago. He told a story about he was big enough after Soul Plane. He was selling out the comedy clubs, adding shows even. Could have gone to theaters that year, but instead spent another year going through all the comedy clubs again just to collect email
Oh,
addresses
that's yeah. That he very canny in terms of work, how
Right.
to collect
and
that money.
controlling his audience at the
There
source.
you go, because you own that list. Then,
Yes.
and you download it. You make sure that nobody can take that from you. And now,
My the biggest mistake I've ever made in my career is ignoring the technological trends that have come and not respecting them as true changes in the guard. I am not going to sleep on the metaverse. I don't know much about NFTs and crypto and all of that, but I can tell you the metaverse is weird. It's hard to explain, but it feels very similar to the conversations people had when they were trying to explain Twitter to me, and I called them stupid too.
Listen, when you figure it out, let us know because I'm
Oh,
still trying to figure it out.
it ain't nothing but it's fantasy land. Go do the same shit digitally that you do in real life. And
Okay,
because we from the go out generation, it seems weird. But it's going to be a lot of people that aren't from a go out generation. And this pandemic is creating a lot of people that are now former go out generation
true.
who are going to be more than happy to go to some weird 3D Sim City ass. It's the Sims for real.
Okay, all
I
The
would
right.
like to
Sims.
very
Sounds
briefly
fun.
ask you a question because I know Tananari is dying to ask you something else. In the midst of a pandemic, looking back on things you might have done, looking at frustrations in your life, those things have got to knock you off center. I have this belief that in life, they pay you for how much stress you can take without cracking. So,
Right.
how do you deal with stress in your life? How do you stay balanced, Roy?
Um, the child helps.
Yes, yes.
Children have a way of allowing you to forget what what is bothering you or remembering why you work so hard.
There you go. Clarity of values.
Yeah, I steal moments, I go to therapy. I don't consider therapy relaxing. It helps, but I don't think that's like I'm not a spa guy. Like I don't take 3-day trip. I would love to, but like I steal moments. I'm the guy that gets there early. Like sometimes I get to set an hour early just so I can sit,
Mm.
just to sit. Video games help. For me, I found that being alone helps. The trick with that is not allowing other people to make you feel a certain kind of way because you want space or making you feel like you have to explain yourself to them. That's the part I still kind of struggle with.
Hmm.
But, it's small things, like there's days where like if I had two flight options, right? And one of them is a 45-minute layover and the other's a 4-hour layover, sometimes I'll just choose the 4
Right.
and then just sit at the airport and have a meal. Like
Right.
there's I have to pick these moments to deliberately slow things down because if I don't, then I'll just keep working because I love what I do and it makes me happy. But, you also have to cordon off time for other things.
That's right.
I love that. That's a great answer. Really quickly, you've been so generous with your time. You kind of referenced when we were taping your podcast that you had a couple horror stories in your career. What is a situation that would qualify as a horror story?
Ooh, job wise, or
Yes.
just career in general? Ooh.
Career in general or job, it's all part of the same thing.
You mentioned something about booking and losing a job. In
Ooh,
this,
ooh. Oh. You talking about should I say the show? I guess I can. It was Wipeout on ABC, and I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened. Um, yeah, that's the advice to young people. Don't say nothing more than what need to be said at an audition. Keep your mouth shut, do your job, leave the room. Don't try to be nobody's friend.
okay.
Nobody wants to be your friend. They just want to employ you, and they want you to do good because they don't want to be in the room all day looking at people that are terrible. So do your job and go home. I was auditioning to be the sidekick joke dude on Wipeout. This is the first iteration, not the Rob Riggle run that I think they did before, but I don't know, '07, '08, somewhere in there. And I felt like I had was a solid audition. And you had a good audition because as you're leaving, they ask you, yeah, so what's your schedule next week? You be like, ooh, y'all trying to book a nigga quick, ain't you? And so I was excited about that. And as I'm leaving, I look on the table and I know what year it was. It was the year after the Celtics won the championship. So I think that was 2008 when Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce or whatever. So this had to be '09 or something, or it was the same season, right? As I'm leaving the audition, I see a Kevin Garnett poster or shirt or something on the table. And at the time, the Celtics were not playing good basketball. And I just I was like, oh, Celtics fan. Well, last year was good, but I'm sure this year is tough for you, huh? Just 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 giving you a little bit of just shit. I didn't mean it. Hey man, the Celtics struggling, huh? And the guy goes, one of the guys in the room, he goes, Roy, where are you from? Um, I'm from Alabama. How's Alabama's NBA team doing this year, Roy? We don't have a team. Exactly. We'll be in touch.
Ooh.
And I
Oh,
never heard from Wipeout again.
oh my gosh.
Oh,
So just
oh.
keep your mouth shut. Keep your
Yeah,
your
salesmen
mouth
say
shut.
that, man. When you've made the sale, stop talking.
Yeah, I ain't saying that I booked the show, but I know that the mood changed immediately the moment I talked shit about his basketball team.
That reminds me,
Whoever that was, if that gets back to you, I'm sorry.
not knowing what to say. To say
The
what you
Celtics still ain't
say,
won
keep
shit.
it moving.
How
Whew.
about that? The Celtics still ain't won shit.
How about that? How about that? This has been incredible. Can you let our listeners know?
Yeah, you got more than one. Come on,
But we actually we did pretty well
believe in
first week.
yourself.
We did pretty well. Let our listeners know what you got coming up. What do you want to plug? Any tour dates? Do you have any
I got
projects?
nothing to plug but my podcast, Roy's Job Fair. Wherever you listen to podcasts, it's up there. We just tell employment stories, good or bad, and help people, be better at what they do.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Beautiful. I like to try to extract something from what has been said that I think is the most important thing. And I would say with you, you've touched on this many times, clarity of values. You know why you're doing it. You know what your life is about. You know what you enjoy. And sometimes you just need to be by yourself and tune out the noise and just kind of listen to your own heart. Play with
Absolutely.
your child, eat a meal, take care of those basic things to recenter yourself and stay in the center of the storm, my man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for these dropping these pearls of wisdom with humor and real heart, real
Thoughtfulness.
honesty. For us, lifewritingpodcast.com is how you found us. Lifewriting Weekly is our mailing list. And Lifewriting Premium
He's our
represents
sponsor, pays our bills.
it pays our bills. It's our year-long writing course. It's talking to us every week. At your own pace. Every week you get a new lesson, and it is the best. It's the best of what we've been teaching and gathering over 30 years. And you can find out about that at lifewritingpremium.com.
Yeah, I have essays from when I was teaching creative writing and screenwriting at Antioch University. I lectured at the Geneva Writers Conference, videos, lessons, PDFs. Every week, a new module. You take it in your own pace. So check out www.lifewritingpremium.com.
Yeah, for me, they say you find out who your perfect audience is and you aim it at that. My perfect audience is pretty much a 20-year-old, 25-year-old version of me. What did I want to know? What did I need to know? What would have made a difference? So we're trying very, very hard to leave that trail of breadcrumbs to help other people because other people helped us. It's as simple as that.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Thank,
Absolutely. Roy Wood Jr., thank you so much for making the
Thank
time
you all.
to come on our
Appreciate it.
second
thank
podcast.
you.
And
Thank
we
you all.
can't
Have a good
wait
one.
to hear Beyond the Scenes when that comes out, the Daily Show podcast. We'll keep our eyes open for that one. All
Yeah.
right, everybody.
Indeed.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great week and make yourself the hero or heroine of your own story.
All right.
Bye bye.